Hey there everyone, welcome back to Press for Truth TV. Today is Wednesday, June the 20th, 2012. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm just down here at the harbor front with my friend Sam Labrier. What's up?
Hi guys.
And as you can see, we have a nice little spot down by the water here where we decided to sit down and shoot my daily video for today. So I wanted to talk to Sam today and get a little bit of your well, Sam, you're from Montreal. You've been living in Montreal, and you've been there for the whole student protests. Like, what's your opinion of how it's been going over the last, I guess, few months? Some of the protests there.
Yeah, well, it's kind of it's not really a cut and dry issue for me because I'm totally against the tuition increases, and I totally sympathize with the students. And I'm actually a student myself in Montreal, and but so I know from experience trying to deal with some of the leaders of the student protests, because the university that I go to, Concordia, was one of the leading centers of the student protests in Montreal. And when it was first getting going, I tried to talk to a lot of the protesters and the leadership about what are your tactics? What are you trying to do? Because I would see them, standing in the street, blocking traffic, and thinking that they were accomplishing something. And I would say, all you're doing is turning the public against you, and you want to get the public on your side. And the more I talked to them, the more I realized that they were more like radical anti-capitalist types, and they weren't really interested in the public per se, because the public were all mindless drones or whatever, working for the man or however they. So I found their attitude kind of immature sometimes, and so that's why I say it's not really cut and dry for me, because like for instance now Charest, who's the premier, he was going to be voted out before this whole thing started going. And now his popularity is through the roof now, because so many people in Montreal are fed up with the tactics of these protesters. They're just trying to get home after work, and they sit in traffic for hours because they cut off bridges and they block highways and stuff.
Is there a large element of the socialist, anarchist kind of protesters there?
I would say it's the largest element.
Yes.
A lot of them are the left-wing anarchists, the Noam Chomsky fans, the anti-capitalists.
Right.
And I tried to tell them early on, power is not standing in the street. Power is in political organizing and in getting people elected to the Quebec legislature that are on your side. And they didn't want to hear it. And all they want to do is do marches every night. And it's like, I find it inspiring, to a certain degree, to see these huge marches of all these people coming together, because it doesn't happen a lot in Quebec. Quebec tends to be very interested in the hedonistic lifestyle, sitting on the patio, having a glass of wine and a nice meal and everything. And they don't tend to get really active politically and organized. So it was nice to see, like these hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. So that really did warm my heart, so to speak. But there was never anything more. They would never go past that stage. And they think that just standing in the street waving placards is going to somehow get everything changed. And it just doesn't work that way. Throughout history, you look back, like for instance at the Vietnam protests or the civil rights protests are a great example. Sure, they had Martin Luther King leading marches in the streets, but they also had people working every day with members of Congress trying to get the Civil Rights Act passed. That power, they realize that power is in legislation. It's not necessarily in standing in the street waving signs. Standing in the street waving signs is good to show how much power you have, how many people you have on your side, but you need something more.
Mm-hmm. What it ended up doing, it seems, too, is bringing on more draconian laws, like Bill 78, which just restricts their freedoms even more. Can you speak to Bill 78?
Yeah, Bill C-78 is, like you said, a total draconian law, and I don't agree with it at all. I mean, as much as, like I said, I think that the protesters need to adopt new tactics because theirs aren't working, it still doesn't excuse Bill C-78. They're still protesters. They still have a right to free speech. They still have the right to freedom of assembly and all that. And Yes, there are some, like, of the Black Bloc anarchists who may or may not be cops. You know, I mean, we know from Montebello that the guys dressed in masks wearing black are often police officers looking to discredit the protest movement.
Yeah.
So they may or may not be cops. But yeah, so there were some people, you know, breaking bank windows and stuff like that. But it still doesn't excuse Bill C-78. It's a total travesty of justice, and the UN even, you know, the UN, I'm not a big fan of the UN, but the UN even just came out and said that essentially that Quebec is now a human rights violator with Bill C-78, and for once I agree with the UN.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people around the world and in Canada too are now realizing it's beyond tuition now. It's a bigger issue of just basic civil rights and
yeah, and you saw, like, the day after, or 2 days after Bill C-78 was passed, you had a massive rally in Montreal. I think it was 250,000 people.
Right.
And a lot of them weren't students. They were professionals, you know, they were parents who said, okay, you know, maybe I wasn't really on board with the whole tuition protest before, but now they're taking away just basic, you know, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. And so it galvanized the Quebec public even more.
Yeah. So people are getting arrested for wearing red squares?
People are getting arrested for all kinds of ridiculous things. I saw an article the other day that a girl was on the metro reading the book 1984.
Right.
And she got taken aside by the police, who said, "Get out of here and don't come back." And she said, "Why? What was I doing wrong?" And they wouldn't give her an explanation. They just said, "If you come back, we'll arrest you." And so I mean, I agree with her. She went back and she stood up for her rights. She said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I have a right to be here. I'm just reading a book in the subway," you know. And they arrested her. They said, "You didn't listen to us? Well, you know, Bill C-78. Now we have special laws of arrest now, and we deem you someone who is a troublemaker," whatever it was, the excuse. And I mean, I really don't think it's going to hold up in court, honestly, if it's challenged in court. But just the fact that, you know, I mean, how many people are going to challenge it in court? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and the more people that don't challenge it in court, the more legitimacy the law gets. You know?
Yeah.
Because the law is all about setting precedents. You know, that's how it works. And so the more precedents that are set with people not challenging the law and just accepting their so-called, you know, arrest for whatever they did, the more legitimacy the law gets. And I think that's very dangerous.
So where do you see this going in your opinion in Montreal? Like, things are it seems like they're escalating, or they're not about to stop.
Yeah. I mean, I saw what happened with Occupy, and I think that a lot of the problems with the student movement is a lot of same things that went wrong with Occupy Montreal, and that they thought that just standing in the street protesting was going to solve something, and eventually it just fizzled out because they weren't getting anything done. And people, you know, when you have this sort of power and you have all these people coming together and willing to work with you, you got to start getting stuff done. You know, that's what people want. They want to see results. And I'm worried that this great potential that there is right now for mass organization and getting new laws passed and stuff like that is all going to go to waste. Now we'll see, because September's right around the corner, and the new semester will be coming, and maybe the student movement, you know, will start gaining again. They'll have a whole new strike, and you know, this time though, because the last time they started the strike in the middle of the semester when everybody had already paid tuition. This time maybe they'll do it before people pay tuition, and they'll put even more pressure on the universities because they won't be getting their tuition checks.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just worried that they have too much of that attitude of, oh, we'll just stand in the street and protest and that'll change things, and it won't get anything done, and they'll waste this amazing potential that they have.
Yeah, well, it is an amazing time, and hopefully they take full advantage of this time, and the rest of the Canadians and rest of the people around the world realize that now is the time to stand up for everything you believe in, and for your rights and basic civil rights, like what people are doing in Montreal and Quebec. But anyways, we always appreciate your insight, Sam, and thanks for talking to us, man.
My pleasure. It's
and,
great to see you.